verses 22 to 26.
Mark. Chapter Mark.
When Jesus and his disciples arrived at Bethsaida, they brought to him a blind man and begged him to touch him. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. Putting spittle on his eyes, he laid his hands on him and asked, "Do you see anything?" Looking up, he replied, "I see people looking like trees and walking." Then he laid his hands on his eyes a second time, and he saw clearly. His sight was restored, and he could see everything distinctly. Then he sent him home and said, "Do not even go into the village." Lord, I believe that you are leading me, but sometimes I sense insecurity creeping within me. So I renew my confidence in you once more. I know that you can desire only what is good for me. Thank you for loving me unconditionally. In return, take my love and my desire to please you in everything. Deepen my humility and increase my trust in you, dear Jesus. Jesus leads. From the very get-go, we push ahead for self-sufficiency. Think of a little child who strives to walk by himself without his parents helping him to keep his balance. In the spiritual life, it's the opposite. We need to reach out to Christ for guidance, support, and strength. Admitting our faults can be a humbling but fruitful experience. Pride prevents us from doing this gracefully, but have faith. If we do, Jesus will unleash his power within our lives. Holiness is not in one exercise or another. It consists in a disposition of the heart, which renders us humble and little in the hands of God, conscious of our weakness, but confident, even daringly confident, in his fatherly goodness. Saint Therese of Lisieux. Patience. God has a plan. "I want it now" is a modern cliché. Our wanting it now, though, doesn't always work with God. His plan is a plan for our greater good, even if it isn't our plan. The blind man's sight wasn't healed instantly, but gradually. How we want to be holy now and never return to the valley of filth and pride. Yet we seem to fall again and again. Holiness is always a work in progress, but that doesn't faze Jesus. He knows the power his grace can work in our lives. Simply turn your difficulties over to him and keep trying. Our failures teach us to be humble, and this can only bring us closer to God. This I know very well. Although I should have on my soul all the crimes that could be committed, I would lose none of my confidence. Rather, I would hasten, with my heart broken into pieces by sorrow, to cast myself into the arms of my Savior. I know how greatly he loved the prodigal son. I have marked his words to Mary Magdalene, to the adulterous woman, to the Samaritan. No one can make me afraid, because I know to whom to cling by reason of his love and mercy. I know that all this multitude of offenses would disappear in the twinkling of an eye, as a drop in a roaring furnace. Saint Therese of Lisieux. Humble Jesus. He tells the man not to go into the village. Is Jesus afraid or in a hurry? No, his humility simply beckons him to move on quietly, without anyone knowing. Jesus is fascinated with humility, and thus practices it. We, on the other hand, love to get the credit. We crave recognition. Simply enter a professional office, and behold the recognition plaques lining the walls like wallpaper. Jesus had no plaques. He had only a reputation of doing good deeds. He teaches us the power of purity of intention, which shuns any type of self-aggrandizement. Jesus, help me to abandon myself to your care. I trust in you completely. Knowing that I am weak, and you are my strength, gives me confidence. Help me to keep in mind that I am little, and you are great. You are the one who deserves the glory, and you ought to be the protagonist in my life. Help me to go about quietly doing good, like you.
Daily Meditations of Pope Benedict XVI, presented by Leonardo D. Philippus of St. Luke Productions.
The Church and the 40 Days. The Church is being urged ever more loudly and insistently to exchange a distant and unreal redemption by the Word for a more robust redemption by bread and the sure path of politicization. Our experience, then, is of a church in the wilderness, a church in a 40-day period. And yet for us too, and for the church of our day, this time in the wilderness can become a time of grace in which a new love can grow out of the suffering induced by God's distance from us. We often have the oppressive feeling that the manna of our faith will be enough only for the present day. But God gives us that manna new each day if we allow Him to do so. We must live in a world in which God is seemingly to be found only as one who is dead, but He can strike living water even from dead stones. I believe that during this season of fasting, we must hearten ourselves anew to accept our situation in patience and faith and to follow fearlessly after our hidden God. If we journey on in patient faith, then for us too a new day can dawn out of the darkness, and God's bright world, the lost world of images and sounds, will be restored to us again. There will be a new morning in God's good creation.
This meditation is taken from Benedictus, published by Ignatius Press and Magnificat, and produced by St. Luke Productions. Learn more at stlukeproductions.com.
Today is Wednesday the 15th of February, in the 6th week of Ordinary Time. The Chamber Orchestra of London, directed by Alistair King, play a setting of Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a help in the trials that would crush us. So we will not be afraid when the earth heaves and the mountains are thrown into the depths of the seas. As you enter into prayer today, ask yourself what you are afraid of and dwell on these words. Be still and know that I am God. Today's reading is from the book of Genesis.
At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark that he had made and sent out the raven. And it went to and fro until the waters were dried up from the earth. Then he sent out the dove from him to see if the waters had subsided from the face of the ground. But the dove found no place to set its foot, and it returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. So he put out his hand and took it and brought it into the ark with him. He waited another 7 days, and again he sent out the dove from the ark. And the dove came back to him in the evening, and there in its beak was a freshly plucked olive leaf. So Noah knew that the waters had subsided from the earth. Then he waited another 7 days, and sent out the dove, and it did not return to him any more. In the 601st year, in the first month, on the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from the earth. And Noah removed the covering of the ark, and looked, and saw that the face of the ground was drying. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal, and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing odour, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of humankind, for the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth. Nor will I ever again destroy every living creature as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease.
Noah has been on the ark for 40 days. Can you imagine what this might have been like? How might you have been feeling? Restless? Unsure of what was to come? Or perhaps hopeful and looking towards the future? Imagine this boat, this ark. What does it look like? How does it smell? What can you hear? As you hear this reading a second time,